Another big question that I get from people is, why can't I close the sale? I'm having a problem getting the person to commit. I'm having a problem getting the person to comply. I'm having a problem getting the person to say yes. And I think I must be doing something wrong at the end of the presentation because I do everything good, but when it comes to the point to actually close the sale, something goes wrong. And what I tell people with this is that if something went wrong in the presentation and you can't close them, then it probably went wrong in the beginning of the presentation, not at the end of the presentation. You see, a sales presentation is made up of a bunch of different steps. And the steps that you do in the beginning ultimately set you up for the end. And the way that I always explain it to people is that if you do everything right in the beginning, the close should be the easiest part. So if you follow the first few steps in the sales presentation and you do them to a T, you will know by the time you get to the close whether or not this person can be closed, and you will know what to do to close the sale. So what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing that a lot of people forget about is something that I call the persuasion disqualifiers. And what they are basically a bunch of different steps or tests that you can run people through to see if they can even be sold or persuaded to buy your product or service or whatever it is that you're offering them. And a lot of people miss this. A lot of people think that it's best to cast a huge net and try to catch as many different fish as they can and then try to utilize them. When in reality, it's always better to cast a smaller net and catch the right kind of fish rather than catching a whole bunch of fish that you can never do anything with. So how do you do that? How do you narrow down your funnel? How do you make that smaller net so that you're only attracting the right type of people and the people that most probably can be sold? Well, you take them through what I call the persuasion disqualifiers. The first disqualifier is money. So if you're selling something, does this person have the ability to pay for whatever it is that you're trying to sell them? If they don't, you might as well forget about it. Now, this all depends, again, figuring out whether or not these people are qualified really depends on your market. It depends on the type of business that you're in, and you are the most qualified person to figure that out. That's part of your job, but make no mistake, you do need to figure this out. So do they have the money to buy what you have to offer? Second thing is, do they have the desire to have what you have to offer? Right? So if you're in the business of selling, let's say, gym memberships, and I did this for years, I was in the fitness industry, and part of the sales strategy that one of the companies that I had was to send people out into the street and walk up to perfect strangers and try to get them interested in fitness and buying a gym membership. And the reality is, if you're walking up to somebody that's 400 pounds, that's coming out of McDonald's, that has a giant soda in their hands, that's smoking a cigarette, is that the person that needs the service that you're offering the most? Absolutely. But based on what that person's doing, are they the most likely to have the desire to have what you have to offer? And so if you're trying to sell somebody something that doesn't truly desire what you have to offer, then you can also eliminate them from the list. They become disqualified. You're going to waste your time if you're trying to force something down someone's throat that they don't want. The next thing is, do they trust you, and do they trust your unique selling proposition? If they don't trust you, or they don't necessarily have to trust you as a person. So if you're selling an information product like I sell, if you're selling something that teaches something to someone else, then they have to trust you. They have to trust that you know what you're talking about. They got to trust that you've done your homework. They're going to trust that whatever you're going to offer them is going to help them. So in that case, it's very important that you have the credibility and you have the trust of the customer. There's also situations where they don't necessarily have to trust you, but they have to trust the unique selling proposition, the thing that makes your product or service different than everything else out there. And there's many different things that make that can be a unique selling proposition. It could be the price, it could be the features, it could be the location, it could be the speed at which it delivers the results. Again, depends on your market, depends on your customer, but they have to trust either you or your unique selling proposition. They have to trust the promise that you're making and believe that your product or service is going to deliver on that promise. The next thing is what I call the ATSY, the ATSY. And what that means is the ability to say yes. Does this person have the ability to say yes? Or are you talking to someone that is not in control of the ultimate buying decision? Do they have to consult with somebody else? Are they not the decision maker? If this is the case, they're also disqualified. So you never want to waste your time trying to sell to somebody that can't say yes. If they don't have the ability to say yes, why are you even talking to them? Once you put someone through the persuasion disqualifier test and you figure out whether or not they're qualified, comes the next part of the process, which takes place in the beginning of the sales process, which is basically during the rapport building process and the data gathering process, where you're gathering intelligence or you're gathering data or you're simply gaining information about your person, about your target, your subject, your prospect, your potential customer, to figure out why it is that they would be potentially interested in your product or service. And you do that by asking a series of questions. The questions are ultimately going to do two things. Number one, they're going to help you build rapport because questions are a natural conversation starter. When you ask someone a question that's related to the topic that you're talking about, they're going to be prompted to answer you, right? Questions usually prompt people to answer them. When the person answers you, you immediately engage in conversation, which, if you know what you're doing, will set you up to build rapport and build a connection with this person. Second thing that the questions are going to do is they are going to uncover the emotional reasons why this person is sitting in front of you and could potentially need your product or service, so that in the end, if they come to you with any objections, you will know how to overcome those objections based on the emotional reasons that they gave you for why they are in front of you. And thirdly, you will begin to get a bird's eye view of what the potential objections could be when you're asking this person these questions. So for instance, going back to the fitness situation, you have a person that's sitting in front of you, you're asking them questions, you're asking them how they heard about you, you're asking them why they want to join a gym, what their goals are, why they haven't done this before. So if a person tells you, well, my goal is to lose weight, and you say why, and ultimately you drive down to the emotional reason for that is that they have a wedding coming up and they want to look good in their wedding pictures, that's your emotional reason right there. If you ask them why they haven't joined before and they tell you, well, I've been lazy, I haven't had the money, I haven't had the time, I wasn't getting married, these are potential objections that could come up later on. They could possibly tell you, well, I don't have the time now. Once you tell them the price, you're already prepared that they might tell you that they can't afford it because they've done that before. So again, the questions do three things. They help build rapport, they help uncover the potential objections, and they also help to uncover the emotional triggers or the emotional reasons why the person would want to say yes, so that you can utilize them later. If you don't ask the right questions, then by the time the close comes and the person objects, you are going to have no idea how to overcome that objection because you didn't gather enough intelligence in the beginning. So let's say you do all those things. You put person through the persuasion disqualifiers, you ask all the right questions, you do a thorough needs analysis or a wants analysis, you uncover all their desires, you uncover all their objections, and you've built an immense amount of rapport with this person, and they still object, they still give you a reason why they don't want to do it. There's basically a 6-step process that you need to go through. The first thing is you need to isolate the objection. What that means is you need to zone in and zero in and figure out if this objection that they're giving you is the only objection that they have. If you don't do this, then the person's just going to keep giving you more and more objections, and you're just going to be sitting there all day trying to overcome different objections. So you want to isolate the objection and ask them, is this the only thing that's holding you back? So you're saying that you don't have the time to do it. Is that the only thing that's stopping you from getting started today? The second thing is you want to evaluate the objection. So a possibility could be that you ran them through the persuasion disqualifiers, but you made an error and you were wrong in assuming that they passed all of the different tests. So maybe you thought that they had the money, maybe you thought that they had the desire, maybe you thought they had the ability to say yes, maybe you thought that they trusted your unique selling proposition, but they didn't. So you need to go back and really quickly evaluate that, but that's usually not an issue if you do things the right way to begin with, but it is a possibility. Next thing is you need to empathize with them. You need to show them that you understand exactly where they're coming from and that you're on their side and that you have their best interest at heart, that you're not there just to get a sale and make them make a rash decision or do something that they're going to regret later. Number 4 is you need to show them proof why they're making the right decision. You could do that either through testimonials, you can show them results that other people have achieved in buying your product or service, or you can do a demonstration. If you're selling a specific product that does something, you can show them exactly what the product does, but you need to prove to them why your product or service is the right thing for them to do. The next thing you need to do is then overcome. So once you show them why they're making the right decision, you need to actually overcome the objection by stating to them why their decision to not get started is a mistake and why their decision to get started is the right decision. And then you need to ask them again. And this is another part that a lot of people miss. A lot of people ask for the sale one time, person says no, they get scared, they get embarrassed, they feel weird, they feel awkward, and they give up. Can't do that. A majority of the sales are made after the 4th attempt. So if you haven't asked somebody at least 4 times to say yes, then you're missing out on the majority of the odds being in your favor, and you're probably not going to get that sale. So again, just to recap, you got to isolate the objection, you got to evaluate, you got to empathize, you have to then prove, overcome, and then ask again. And of course, this is all directly proportional to the fact that you did your homework and you did everything right in the beginning. You ran them through the persuasion disqualifier test, and you asked the right questions and did a thorough needs analysis.